What's up, YouTube? Zero here, and today I have an absolutely fantastic Gyarados deck in Pokemon TCG Pocket. In this video, I'll go over the deck build that you can see on the left-hand side of the screen. I'll talk about each of these cards individually, and I'll talk about why this deck is absolutely epic and you should be checking it out, especially for all my Gyarados fans. This is a phenomenal Gyarados deck that you're going to want to be checking out. Before I get into it, I do want to say, if you do enjoy this video, feel free to give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button for more Pokemon TCG content. I do a bunch of other video games, so feel free to check those out as well. Without further ado, time to talk about this deck. It's worth noting, this is the Wild Swing Gyarados from the Wisdom of Sea and Sky packs. There are 3 Gyaradoses in this game right now. This is the one that can be found in the Wisdom of Sea and Sky packs. And this deck is centered around Gyarados. You're going to win with Gyarados. You're going to lose with Gyarados. The name of the game with this deck is get Gyarados into that active slot and start wild swinging as quickly as possible. So let's talk about Gyarados, since it's the star of this deck and how you're going to win and lose. So for Gyarados, Wild Swing for 2 water energy deals 20 plus damage. So you're always going to deal 20 damage. However, there's a huge caveat to Wild Swing. You may discard any number of your benched water Pokemon. This attack does 40 more damage for each benched Pokemon you discard in this way. So if you have a full bench and you choose to discard all 3 Pokemon on your bench, of course they have to be water, but there are only water type Pokemon in this deck. If you do choose to discard all 3 water type Pokemon, you are going to deal 140 damage. That's absolutely awesome. You can deal up to 140 damage with Gyarados. Of course, depending upon your opponent, how much HP the active Pokemon in your opponent's slot has, you may not want to discard all 3 Pokemon on your bench. You can pick and choose. You can deal 60 damage, you can deal 100 damage, or of course you can deal, as I mentioned, 140 damage. But Gyarados can really turn the tide of battle if you have it in the active slot powered up and you have Pokemon cards in your hand or on your bench ready to discard, so you can deal that massive amount of damage. So it's absolutely awesome. It is a phenomenal card. And as I mentioned, it's going to be found in the Wisdom of Sea and Sky packs, but specifically the Lugia packs. So be aware, if you do want this card, grind those Lugia packs from the Wisdom of Sea and Sky drops, and you're going to have a chance of getting this. But this is a really fun card, and it's great in this deck. So now let's talk about, of course, Magikarp. You do need a Magikarp to evolve into Gyarados. Magikarp, the one I have is from those same packs, the Wisdom of Sea and Sky Lugia packs. For 1 water energy, has Splashing Dodge. Deals 10 damage, and you get to flip a coin. If the coin is heads, during your opponent's next turn, you prevent all damage from and effects of attacks done to Magikarp. So that's going to be pretty nice. Magikarp does not have a high HP, only 30 HP. This Magikarp, if you do flip for heads, not only automatically is going to deal 10 damage regardless of the coin flip, but you can prevent damage to Magikarp if you do have it in that active slot. You're not going to want Magikarp in that active slot to start. You're going to want one of the other Pokemon so the other Pokemon can take damage. Of course, if you discard Pokemon with Gyarados' Wild Swing, it does not cost you any points. So if one of the other Pokemon take damage and you have it on your bench and you discard that Pokemon, it doesn't matter if it's at full HP or at 10 HP, it's not going to cost you any points. So you want one of those other Pokemon in the active slot to take damage, then you can retreat it to the bench and discard it with your Wild Swing Gyarados. So that's pretty awesome as well. You can save yourself from a Cyrus or even a Sabrina by utilizing Wild Swing Gyarados and knocking all of your own Pokemon to the discard pile so you can deal that extra damage. So that's a pretty nice strategy. Just something to be aware of is that if you do have a Pokemon that takes damage, retreat it to the bench, attack with Gyarados, and discard it so you don't have to worry about a Cyrus and your opponent finishing off a weakened Pokemon. So that's just another bit of strategy you can throw out with this Gyarados deck. Next, let's talk about some of the other Pokemon in this deck, because you do need a fair amount of Pokemon to make Gyarados work. You need Pokemon on the bench so you can discard them when you're wild swinging with Gyarados. First, I'm going to talk about Delibird. I love Delibird. Penguin. It's an awesome penguin. When it first released in Pokemon, I loved running with it. An ice-type penguin. Delibird is awesome. Now, of course, in Pokemon TCG Pocket, it's not really going to change the tide of battle too much. But what it does do is it's really going to lend a hand to this deck. As I mentioned, the point of this deck is to get Gyarados onto the playing field as quickly as possible. But there are other cards in this deck that we absolutely need to draw. I'm going to talk about those support cards in a second. But we also need our Pokemon cards. We need the Pokemon. We need Delibird. We need Magikarp. We need Corsola. We need those Pokemon cards in our hand. What Delibird's going to do is, while it does only deal 10 damage for Stumbling Draw 1 Water Energy for this move, you also get to draw a card when you hit with Stumbling Draw. So this is going to be nice. The cards we get to draw from our deck, we not only get to draw 1 per turn, but with Delibird and its Stumbling Draw, we get to draw another card. Again, we're trying to implement our strategy, which is going to be Gyarados Wild Swinging, having those Pokemon on the bench so we can discard them when we need to. And of course, Stumbling Draw is going to help us get there quicker, whether it's hopefully drawing a card that may be a Gyarados to help us evolve. It may be one of our support cards that we need to utilize with Gyarados to reach maximum effect for this deck. Regardless of what it is, Delibird is going to be phenomenal for this deck because you get to not only deal 10 damage, but also draw a card with Stumbling Draw. And Delibird is going to be found in the Wisdom of Sea and Sky Ho-Oh packs. Next, another card that's actually going to be really important for this deck, Corsola. Corsola, for 1 colorless energy, has Find a Friend. So Find a Friend, you put a random Pokemon from your deck into your hand. So this means we can potentially find a Gyarados if we're looking for a Gyarados. We could potentially find a Magikarp. But what's really important is, again, we need these Pokemon cards to put onto our bench. So utilizing Corsola in that active spot and Find a Friend, we can draw a Pokemon card, have them in our hand, put them on the playing field if we need to put them on the playing field, but getting them ready for Gyarados is going to be insanely important. So Corsola is going to be able to lend its hand to Gyarados by finding a friend. It's going to be really important for this deck as well, just like Delibird. Delibird, you're just drawing a card, so it could be a support card that you need, it could be a Pokemon card that you need. Corsola is going to find a friend, so it could be a friend that you need. Really, you always need a friend because Gyarados needs those extra Pokemon on the bench so it can Wild Swing for more damage. And Corsola is going to be found in the Wisdom of Sea and Sky Lugia packs. Next, the last Pokemon in this deck. I have an awful time pronouncing its name. Y'all already see it. You can see it on the left-hand side of the screen. I have 1 normal one and 1 full art one. It is Pyukumuku. That's how I pronounce it. Hopefully it's correct, but Pyukumuku is a phenomenal card for this deck. It has an ability that's really phenomenal, and it's called Innards Out. If this Pokemon is in the active spot and knocked out by damage from an attack from your opponent's Pokemon, do 50 damage to the attacking Pokemon. So even if Pyukumuku is taken out, and then you can put your Gyarados into that active slot, even if you're not able to sacrifice Pyukumuku with Gyarados' Wild Swing, as long as this Pyukumuku was taken out by an attack, you're dealing 50 damage to your opponent's active Pokemon. That's going to be absolutely awesome because you can set up your Gyarados by already dealing 50 damage. So that's awesome for this deck as well. Just be aware, this is a card that while it doesn't have the attacks like Find a Friend or Draw a Card like our Delibird and Corsola, it does have the opportunity to deal damage if our opponent attacks it and takes it out. So we're going to be dealing 50 damage to our opponent if it takes it out with an active attack. So just be aware, it's something that's great for this deck because it can really stall. And if it doesn't stall, if our opponent doesn't care about losing HP, we're going to be dealing 50 damage if we're taken out, which is awesome. It also has a move for 1 water energy. Sprinkle Water deals 20 damage. So we could deal a little bit of damage with Pyukumuku as well. And this card is going to be found in the Celestial Guardians Lunala packs. Next, couple of basic cards in this deck. Pokeball, you put a random basic Pokemon from your deck to your hand, and Professor's Research, draw 2 cards. I already talked about the importance of getting cards via Corsola and Delibird, so I don't have to mention these 2 cards too much. Y'all already know what they do. Obviously, again, trying to get Gyarados into that active spot and wild swinging as quickly as possible, and getting those Pokemon on the bench so we can utilize them for Wild Swing, dealing 40 extra damage per discarded Pokemon. Next, Fissure. Fissure is going to be insanely important when combined with Gyarados. It is a absolutely phenomenal card. There are not a ton of uses for Fissure, as it's a very specific supporter card, but it's phenomenal when combined with Wild Swing Gyarados. So Fissure is a supporter card. You flip 3 coins. For each heads, a water Pokemon is chosen at random from your discard pile and put into your hand. So that's going to be pretty important for Gyarados, because we can, if we've already discarded 3 Pokemon from the bench, we attacked for 140 because we had to attack for 140, and we discarded 3 Pokemon from our bench to the discard pile. Now we can utilize Fissure to get as many, up to 3 water Pokemon from the discard pile as possible. If we are able to flip for 3 heads, we get those 3 Pokemon back into our hand. We can play them onto the battlefield and then attack again with Gyarados for 140 damage. That's absolutely phenomenal, and Fissure is going to be insanely important when coupled with Gyarados, so we can get those Pokemon from our discard pile back into our hand, back onto the playing field, and powering up Wild Swing again. So this is an absolutely phenomenal card for Gyarados in this deck, because it can get those Pokemon for us a lot quicker than drawing cards from the deck. And Fissure is going to be found in the Wisdom of Sea and Sky packs. On top of that, Fishing Net is going to be phenomenal with Gyarados as well. So Fishing Net, you can put a random basic water type Pokemon from your discard pile into your hand. So let's say you utilize Fissure, you flip for 1 or 2 heads, so you didn't get all of the Pokemon from the discard pile you need. You can utilize Fishing Net to guarantee yourself 1 basic water type Pokemon from that discard pile. So you can, at least with Fishing Net, guarantee yourself 1 water type Pokemon. And because Fishing Net is an item card, you can utilize 2 on the same turn if you need to. So maybe you utilized Fissure, you only flipped for 1 heads, and you need 2 more Pokemon from your discard pile. You can utilize both Fishing Nets and get 2 more, so you can fill up that bench and hit for 140 on consecutive turns. You may not need to, but it is a strategy utilizing Fissure and Fishing Net, depending on the point you are in battle, how much damage you need Gyarados to deal, and how many Pokemon cards you have in your hand, and which ones you may want to discard. So there is some strategy involved. You have to determine which Pokemon you want to discard. You have to determine when you want to use Fissure to put Pokemon cards into your hand, or Fishing Net. But Once you're wild swinging, you're really on a roll, and you can utilize Fisher and Fishing Net to your advantage to continually deal that 140 damage, which is absolutely awesome. Next, please note, I do have one of each of these cards. I have one Sabrina and one Irida. So first, Sabrina. Sabrina is great because you can push a Pokemon out of that active slot that you don't want there. Sabrina, you switch out your opponent's active Pokemon to the bench. Your opponent does get to choose that Pokemon on the bench they put into that active slot, but Sabrina is phenomenal to throw off your opponent's strategy. Maybe you want to force a Pokemon into that active slot because they don't have a lot of HP. Maybe they have a high retreat cost and you want them there to force your opponent to figure out how to retreat them. There are a lot of uses for Sabrina. Maybe you just don't want to deal with the Pokemon in the active slot for whatever reason. There are a lot of uses for Sabrina, but it's great strategy and a great card to have and great for this deck. And that can be found in the Genetic Apex Charizard packs. Last but not least, Irida. Irida heals 40 damage from each of your Pokemon that has any water energy attached. And this is going to be found in the Triumphant Light pack. Of course, Gyarados is key to winning this match. Any match. It's how we're going to win. It is our strategy. Getting Gyarados out there, wild swinging as much as possible. So Irida is going to keep Gyarados alive longer. Of course, what's nice about this deck, there are no EX Pokemon, so you're not going to have to worry about dropping 2 points if one of your Gyaradoses goes down. You get the opportunity to put another Gyarados into that active slot. So Irida is going to keep both of your Gyaradoses, or at least one of them, alive a little bit longer by healing up for 40 HP. It's a great card for this deck. It's going to increase the survivability of Gyarados, increase the survivability of your deck. So that's the deck. It's absolutely phenomenal and a really fun deck to utilize. Gyarados is great and can deal up to 140 damage by discarding Pokemon on your bench. You can discard any Pokemon on your bench, doesn't matter how much HP they have, which is great to maybe save yourself from a Cyrus or Sabrina so your opponent can't take out a Pokemon extremely easily by utilizing one of those supporter cards. On top of that, utilizing Fisher and Fishing Net can almost guarantee that you're going to be able to attack for 140 on consecutive turns if you need to. You don't always need to, as you may be facing a Pokemon that doesn't have a lot of HP, but if you need to, you can attack for 140 on consecutive turns, which is absolutely phenomenal. Gyarados has a lot of power, and this deck is all centered around Gyarados. When you are able to get it swinging, you're going to have a really fun time and you're going to take out a lot of great decks. I know I've gone toe-to-toe and beaten some of the best decks in the game. I've beaten a Giratina Darkrai deck, which is one of the most popular decks in the game. I've beaten a Solgaleo deck, so this deck can go toe-to-toe with some of the best and take them out. I love this deck. It's a phenomenal deck and a great water deck if you're looking for a water deck. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, feel free to give it a thumbs up, hit that subscribe button for more Pokemon TCG content. If you are looking for a certain Pokemon in a deck, let me know in the comment section and I'll get it done. Also, let me know what substitutions you'd make in this deck to make it even better. Let me know in the comment section. Let's talk anything Pokemon TCG in the comment section. I hope you all enjoyed this video, and until next time, peace.